On one fateful night, on the streets of Mumbai, two men were dozing off on the roadside. A dog sleeping beside them suddenly began barking. Both men suddenly woke up and saw a speeding car coming from the opposite side of the road, which suddenly took a turn and dropped directly into the sea. During the daytime, crowd gathered around, and the police had to barricade the scene. At the crime scene, then arrived Inspector Surjan Singh Shekhawat, along with his junior Devrit. When the car was pulled out of the water, they discovered that the dead man was superstar Kareena Kapoor. The eyewitnesses said that it seemed as if the driver saw something, and, in an attempt to save something, he swerved the car. When they spoke with Armin's wife, she told them that he never liked driving, and his driver and spot boy were supposed to be with him. When this statement was confirmed by the driver and spot boy, they told them that Armin had asked both of them to leave, and he would drive home himself. Armin left the set at 2:30 am, and the accident occurred at around 4 p.m. Devrit tells Shekhawat that it takes around 30 minutes to cover such a distance, which raises the question, where he was during all that time. Since it was a high-profile case, Shekhawat ordered all his officers not to tell anything to the press. One of the constables comes up and says, "This case is unsolvable, as over the past few years, many such accidents have happened on the same road." The region where the accident had occurred, it was near a red light area. There was a small room in the area, where a limping man named Taimur knocks on the door of a person named Shashi and tells him about the death of Armin. After listening this, Shashi's girlfriend, who was earlier a prostitute, blurts out that did he really knew Armin. She thought he was joking. After listening to this, Taimur got confused, and Shashi seemed troubled. In the evening, Taimur brings a new sim for Shashi, but when he asks for the reason, he shouts at him for being so nosy. Limping, Taimur craftily picks up the old sim and keeps it. Then in the next scene, we see Shekhawat's home. Things between Shekhawat and her wife seem strained. Later it is revealed that they are still recovering from their son's death. One day, when the family had gone on a picnic near a lake, the two were dozing off in the sun. Their son and one of his friends were playing nearby. Then they asked if they could play a little farther and jumped into a motorboat. The kids somehow managed to start the boat, which took them far from the reach and overturned. Out of this accident, only their son's friend came out alive. Due to this trauma, Shekhawat has insomnia and blames himself for not being able to save him. He roams the city every night in his car. To cope up with the trauma, the couple shifted to a new house. One day, when Shekhawat's wife was alone at home unpacking, a neighbor named Freni visited her and welcomed her to the new neighborhood. While Shekhawat's wife was preparing the tea, the neighbor began snooping around the house and found a photo of a small boy and said hello Karen. It was weird, as she didn't knew his name. Back on the case, Shekhawat was told by Armin's wife and his friend Sanjay that Armin had asked for 20 lakhs cash from the accountant. When the accountant was interrogated, he told that around 3 years ago he dropped a similar amount on Armin's behalf to the receptionist at Hotel Lido. When the hotel was reached by the police, the receptionist had left work and nobody knew about him. One day, when Shekhawat and his wife were walking near their house, Freni catches up to them and tells them that Karen wants to talk to them. Listening to this, Shekhawat shouts at her to stop telling lies. After reaching home, his wife urges him to think about it, but he angrily walks away. Shekhawat was angry, sad and crying in his car when a girl named Rosie knocked on the window. During a small conversation between Shekhawat and Rosie, she tells him that the receptionist is in Mailer and he is suffering from AIDS. When Devrit himself reaches there, he finds the same. He tells them that he worked for Shashi, but he doesn't know the motive. When Shekhawat and his team reached Shashi's house, he was nowhere to be found. Instead, they caught Taimur as he knew a lot about him. Even after getting badly beaten up, he could not tell anything. From the police station, Taimur comes to know that Shashi was involved in something big. Going back home, he puts Shashi's old SIM in his phone and rings it. The caller asked him to meet him at the fair the next day and collect the money. Later, Shekhawat again meets Rosie, and she asks about Shashi. She asks him to keep a lookout, and he will surface. The next day, while he was thinking about the conversation, something clicked and he told the police to look for Shashi in the mortuary. It was found out that Shashi was shot from a distance in the fair. On the other hand, Shekhawat's wife met with Freni and held a seance where Karen tells her mother to be happy through Freni. On hearing about Shashi's murder, Taimur decides to blackmail the caller and threatens him to reveal everything to the police. Surprisingly, the number belonged to Armin's friend Sanjay. In the scene, we also see Rosie standing beside Taimur when he made such a call. Here everything becomes complicated. Sanjay then goes to his father and tells him about the blackmailer and the truth about Armin's death. Later, Shekhawat again meets up with Rosie, and he asks him whether he knew Armin, and she says yes. This confuses him, and he asks her to tell everything. She reveals that A friend of Armin named Nickel was a customer of Shashi, as Shashi was a pimp. One night the friend asked Shashi to send a girl, and she was sent. There she met with Nickel, Armin and Sanjay, and they all went on a drive. Later we also saw that Nickel was completely paralyzed and couldn't speak or do anything. When Shekawit reaches home, he discovers that her wife and Frenny were holding seance and gets mad at her. Frenny urges him to heal himself else the spirits will seek him. His wife also gets angry. They argue, and then she leaves him. Shekawit again roams around the streets and comes across Rosie and breaks down. She takes him to a hotel, and he tells her about his family and the grievances. She talks to him and he falls asleep. She also told him that Shashi's girlfriend is in danger. Next day Shekawit saves her, and then she tells him that Shashi did meet Armin that night, and Taimur also knows a lot. Meanwhile Sanjay had asked Taimur to meet him and collect the money. Sanjay had hired some goons to follow Taimur after collecting the money, but he smartly exchanged the money bag with an empty bag, and for that goons shot him. While the goons were escaping, Rosie appears on the scene and Taimur just shouts, "I didn't do anything," and slips off the building and dies. The police managed to catch one of the goons and he told them that Sanjay hired them. When Shekawit arrested Sanjay, he told them about being blackmailed and the whole story. 3 years ago, Sanjay, Armin and Nickel were going to a party, and Nickel suggested to take a prostitute with them. He called Shashi, and he sent a girl named Rosie. Nickel started kissing her in the car, and somehow the door opened and both fell off the car. Sanjay and Armin rushed Nickel to the hospital, but left Rosie there and called Shashi, but she died there. Next day Shashi called them and told them that there is video footage of them while they were picking her up, and since then he was blackmailing them. When Shekawit watches the video, he is shocked to know that the girl in the footage is Rosie, but he concludes that Shashi was lying and they were falsely blackmailed. While Shekawit was driving Sanjay to the police station, suddenly Rosie appeared in the backseat and again in front of the car at the same spot where Armin died. His jeep also overturned and nosedives into the sea. Sanjay died on the spot, but Shekawit was saved by Rosie. It is clear now that Rosie is actually a ghost. She had died that night 3 years ago and was seeking revenge upon the men who had left her to die, and Shashi and Taimur, who had misused her death to blackmail people. No one believed Shekawit's story, but since everyone involved was dead, the case was closed hastily.